Good morning, everyone. Congressman Joe Crowley, the chair of the Democratic Caucus, and I'm joined by my colleague, the vice chair from California, Linda Sanchez, and the gentleman from Maryland, my good friend Elijah Cummings, the ranking member on the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. We're just coming out of a very productive caucus meeting, our first of the year, and it went off without a hitch. At the top of everyone's mind is the intelligence report that came out Friday that really is quite stunning. A report that confirms that Russia made a concerted effort to influence our elections. They made a concerted effort to influence the election of our government. And it was from the top, from Vladimir Putin himself. Let's be clear, this was an attack on our democracy, an attack on our government, an attack on everything that we stand for and believe in. That's why I support and I'm a proud co-sponsor of the legislation being sponsored by Congressman Cummings and Eric Swalwell to create a bipartisan, independent, outside commission to get to the bottom of this attack and ensure something like this never happens again. And while President-elect Trump is apparently fine with turning a blind eye to a foreign government interfering in our national elections, we are not. There absolutely needs to be consequences, and the U.S. should respond swiftly and thoroughly. And we'll hear momentarily from Congressman Cummings more on that issue. We also discussed this morning our commitment to defending the Affordable Care Act and preventing Republicans from jeopardizing the health security of millions of Americans. It really is brazen to shout from the rooftops that they are going to repeal the ACA, yet have absolutely nothing, zero, zilch, nada, to replace it with. And it appears as though even some Republicans are finding it too big a pill to swallow. The fact is, Republicans throw their repeal around as if it was nothing, but it has real consequences for Americans and for our economy as well. And finally, I want to say that our hearts go out to the people of Fort Lauderdale as well as Orlando after this past weekend's tragedies. There are obviously a lot of questions that need to be answered, and I hope that we get to those answers soon. And with that, let me turn the microphone over to our new Vice Chair of the Democratic Caucus, Linda Sanchez.
Thank you, Joe. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We just had a productive caucus meeting where the Democrats are focused and united on the future. We want to grow our economy and raise wages so that working families are supported by good paying jobs. We want to strengthen Social Security and Medicare so that after a long career of working, workers can retire with some peace of mind and some financial security. But instead of working to make America stronger, Republicans have launched an all-out war on the health of our country. They've somehow fooled Americans into believing that the ACA really only benefits a few low-income people or only benefits illegal immigrants. The reality is that 156 million Americans who currently get their health insurance through their employer are also going to be suffering the consequences if the ACA is repealed. What does it mean for people who have health insurance through their employers? Well, it means that lifetime caps on coverage are going to make a comeback. It means that insurance companies and big corporations will again be able to deny coverage to people with pre-existing conditions. It means that millions of workers who work more than 30 hours a week are going to lose their insurance altogether. Companies would no longer be required to keep their employees' children on their health care plans until they're 26 years old. And it means that women can be charged higher premiums than men so that the practice of gender rating returns. And that, personally for me, is something I can't accept and will fight to the death to keep from happening. As a woman who just gave birth to a child when the ACA was passed, I know that gender rating is discriminatory. I know that it impacts working families and in particularly working women in a very unfair way. Everything about your health insurance is threatened. And what's worse for working families is that there's no end to the pain. After 7 years, Republicans still don't have a replacement plan. They are irresponsibly pushing forward this notion of repealing the ACA without a replacement plan. That you would have think that in 7 years they would have come up with something. They've had 7 years and they have nothing. So now they're talking about repealing it and phasing in something else. That's something else we don't know because they have no clue. They have no plan, they have no idea, and they don't know what they will do after they repeal the ACA. They even can't promise that that whatever they replace the ACA with will cover as many people as the ACA does. You know, the first things that they want to do when they control all the levers of government, they want to disregard process, they want to disregard the rules, they want to change the ethics of this place so that they can do whatever they do without transparency in the dark. And it's unacceptable. So Democrats are ready to work with them if they want to fine-tune the parts of ACA that perhaps are not working so well. But if they want to dismantle real progress for working families, then Republicans are going to have to do it alone because we won't stand there and let it happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda. I won't say this often, but even the Freedom Caucus has some helpful suggestions that maybe we learn more about the impact on our nation's budget on the repeal of the Affordable Care Act before we act. Just to go back to the initial subject that I mentioned, that is on the emoluments clause and our president's conflicts of interest. Let me turn this now over to Elijah Cummings from Maryland.
Thank you very much, Chairman Crowley, and congratulations to you, and congratulations to you, Vice Chair Sanchez, and I am very proud of your leadership. I'd just like to add a few quick words about our responsibilities as members of Congress to do robust oversight of the incoming Trump administration. I want to make clear that I will work with the President-elect when it benefits the American people. But I will also hold him to account by rooting out waste, fraud, abuse, conflicts of interest, and corruption. In just 10 days, President-elect Trump will take the oath of office to protect and defend our Constitution. I'm hopeful that he will address his vast global entanglements and financial conflicts of interest at his press conference tomorrow. I'm anxiously looking forward to hearing what he has to say. But if he doesn't, I worry he will be in violation of the Constitution he is sworn to uphold. Mr. Trump has 111 or more financial entities operating in 18 different countries and territories every single day. We learn about new conflicts of interest that will no doubt cause serious ongoing problems for his administration. Democrats have asked the Oversight Committee Chairman Chaffetz to conduct the most basic of Mr. Trump's global investigation of Mr. Trump's global financial entanglements to prevent these types of constitutional violations. But all we have heard back from the Republican leaders is radio silence. As you heard yesterday, Mr. Chaffetz had made it clear that he is going to continue investigating Hillary Clinton. And by the way, the other thing that he did was he closed out the Flint hearings when the investigation is still ongoing, and we have not had the subpoenas answered by the administration, the governor's administration up there in Michigan. Both Republicans and Democratic experts warned repeatedly that President-elect Trump must completely divest his ownership interests in the companies around the world and place assets in a truly independent blind trust, or else he will breach federal contracts and violate the Constitution. Yesterday I joined House and Senate Democrats to introduce legislation to do just that. Require the President and Vice President to disclose and divest any potential financial conflicts of interest. I'm also concerned about the scope of Mr. Trump's financial dealings with entities in Russia, a country that interfered in our presidential election. Our intelligence officials made clear that Russia will continue attacking our institutions unless we send a strong signal that this will not be tolerated. That's why Congressman Swalwell and I introduced a bill to create an independent bipartisan commission to investigate foreign interference in our election and offer serious and substantial recommendations to prevent it from ever happening again. Every single House Democrat who has been sworn into office has signed on to this bill. Yet, congressional Republicans have not done so. President-elect Trump said he will make it a priority, and I believe him, to protect the American people from cyber vulnerabilities. And I invite President-elect Trump to work with us to prevent foreign interference in our democratic process. We cannot be distracted from this goal or let this become the new normal. And I thank you.
Fake news. President-elect Trump has released his tax returns. Fact is, it's a lie. He's never going to release his tax returns. And that, in and of itself, is a block to the American people to know what those conflicts of interest are. And I think I applaud Representative Cummings as well as Swalwell introducing this legislation. We need to go beyond that. There needs to be investigations held here in the House and in the Senate to get to the bottom of that. And really, for the benefit of the American people, to move to a blind trust so that those conflicts of interest don't exist for our president. The influence of foreign kings or governments on our nation is paramount to the protection of our democracy. And President-elect Trump needs to understand that. If he doesn't by now, he certainly will when we're done. So we'll take some questions.
Can I bring you back to the ACA? Can I ask you, is there a sense, or have you guys talked to Republicans about some middle ground? Or some, I mean, it seems like, repeal is an non-starter. Can I ask you, is there something where you guys go from here?
It's difficult, I think, and as my colleagues will chime in, difficult to have that discussion when they have never shared with us any replacement for the Affordable Care Act. Over the last 6 years, we've had 6 entirely repeal without any light. What we're concerned about as Democrats are the 20+ million Americans who now have health insurance who did not have it prior to the passage of the Affordable Care Act. And what will happen to them, and what will happen to the entire delivery of medical care in our country if repeal goes without any positive replacement. So it's hard to have discussions back and forth when you're not invited to meetings. The Ways and Means Committee held a one-sided partisan meeting earlier this year, or late last year, without inviting Democrats to. So we're not in a position to actually move legislation. In case folks hadn't noticed, we lost the White House as well as control of the House and the Senate. And it's up to the Republicans to be open towards bipartisanship. Without that, I think the American people will be very skeptical about any legislation that they will attempt to pass. And we don't even know what it looks like at this point. My colleagues will.
If I could just add, I also serve on Ways and Means with Mr. Crowley, and we have seen concerted efforts to repeal. We have tried to engage in discussions about fine-tuning what is not working 100% well with the bill. There's been zero interest on their part in terms of trying to fix those areas that would make it better overall. They are stuck in this mantra of repeal the whole thing. Their ideas for replacement, they haven't shared with us. We've not been invited into those meetings. And I find it curious because one of the first priorities that they had in the rules package coming in, there have been, I serve as ranking member on the Ethics Committee, and there have been some fine-tuning that's needed with the outside Congressional Ethics Office rules. But instead of trying to work in a bipartisan way to fine-tune those rules, they want to scrap the entire OC completely so that there's less transparency. And again, I find it very ironic that once they control all the levers of government, they don't want to fine-tune. They want to do everything in the dark. They want to bulldoze everything, not even attempt to fix something that is working well for most Americans. And I find it highly ironic that they want to do it in the dark with no transparency.
So, part of the problem that the Republicans have is they now have to govern. And they see how hard governing is. If you listen to them very carefully, they talk about keeping the very popular the issue with regard to pre-existing conditions and keeping young people in their insurance policies to 26 years old. They seem to fail to understand that this is like a mosaic, and every piece, or a puzzle, and every piece hinges on the other piece. And so I think one of McCain's former health advisors said, yeah, they have a plan A, which is repeal, but there is no plan B. And so they're now talking about delay, and now you've got at least 6 senators over there saying that this is not a good idea unless they do something simultaneously. So it's, we gave it our best, and all of us, what we want is the very best for the American people. And we're going to do everything we can to make that happen. But my colleagues are right. We can only go but so far.
I liken it to, they want the dessert before eating the vegetables.
Oh, I like that.
And that's the reality of it. You can't have your cake and eat it too, but that's what they want. Mike, you have a question?
Yeah, you mentioned some of the Republican divisions that are already surfacing, some of the deficit concerns, some of the ACA replacement, what's the window going to be? When Trump asked Congress to pay for the wall, and saw some scrutiny on the other side there. Strategically, from the Democratic point of view, what issues do you want to focus on? The Russian hacking. Where do you see the most political advantage for the Democrats? Because ultimately you want to make inroads, not just in your districts where you're already winning elections, you want to make inroads with these Trump supporters who you lost in this election. So where do you see the most leverage? Which issue is going to resonate the most, and where do you want to focus?
There's a treasure trove here.
Yeah, there's
I think there's so much to look at that certainly our role here is to defend what we helped to put in place and the advancement that we have made as a people in this country, primarily as it pertains to health care. I mentioned before, 20 million Americans now have that care. As my friend from Maryland, Mr. Cummings, mentioned, people up to 26 years of age can stay on their parents' insurance, pre-existing conditions, a lift on lifetime caps. Those are things that we fought for, and wellness visits, preventive care to help bring down the cost of insurance. As Elijah just mentioned, it's a lot tougher to govern, and that's what they're realizing. And at the same time, we have a new president coming in with conflict of interest galore. He is the king of conflict of interests. The king of conflict of interests. And almost without any regard to what this means to the American people. Disregarding, quite frankly, and this pertains to Russia. We don't know why he is taking the positions he has taken as it pertains to our intelligence community and rejecting their findings. When everyone else in government, Democrat and Republican, understand that what took place was an attack upon our country and our democracy and all that we believe in as American people. And he rejects it. That is more than troubling to me. The American people, I think, are losing sleep over this. Russia is not our friend. We want a better relationship with them, but they need to want that as well. And as of yet, Mr. Putin has taken every opportunity to undermine democracy, not only here in America, but around the world. And somehow, he's now our best friend. I think my Republican colleagues have to be asking these questions as well. And our hope, and really, we cannot do this. Being in the minority restricts our ability because we cannot hold hearings, we cannot drive this issue. We have to hope that our Republican colleagues in the Senate primarily, Senator McCain and Graham and others, will bring this to the forefront within the Senate. And the hopes are, we hope that our House colleagues will do the same thing. Because it's not about Democrat or Republican. It is about the stability of our democracy and the world.
I just think that since we have the press in front of us, you all have such an important role. You really do. I think this is a critical moment for the press to make the world understand, particularly with what Chairman Crowley started off with. You all are operating in a very difficult circumstance with fake news. But we depend upon you to get the word out of what's actually happening. And so I've said it many times, we have to defend, we are in a fight for the soul of our democracy. And you all are major players.
I would just add, in addition to trying to take away healthcare coverage for millions of Americans. They're trying to weaken healthcare coverage for those who get it through their employer. The assault on our democracy that Moscow Donald doesn't seem to want to look into further or accept. Another issue that troubles the Democratic caucus greatly is the proposed tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans, which will drive up deficits, which then gives the Republicans an avenue to say we need to cut entitlements or we need to lower benefits in Social Security and Medicare, which are programs that millions of American families, seniors, dependents rely on. Those seem to be the three biggest assaults that Democrats are working hard to push back to preserve.
King of conflict of interest, Moscow Donald, you have your pick. Any other questions?
Congressman Sanchez, I just want to back to the ACA for a second. You said that you're open to talking to Republicans about fine-tuning the ACA and whatnot. Last week, Leader Schumer, he was talking about how it's the Republican responsibility. If Republicans get their way of doing illegal Obamacare, are you guys willing to work with them on a replacement?
We would be willing to work on a replacement insofar as it would not reduce the coverage that we had under ACA. I mean, there are certain benchmarks by which we will judge a plan, and if their replacement plan will leave millions of Americans without coverage or not provide many of the safeguards that we worked hard to put into place, then I think it's a non-starter for Democrats.
Thank you all very, very much. We look forward to working with you all throughout this year and the next. So thank you.